Alright, welcome back to Night City, and get ready to wreck stuff, as this week's featured book is Maximum Metal, the Military Vehicle Guide to Cyberpunk 2020. The book is actually mandatory to use several other books because the rules for power armor and advanced vehicle design are only found in this book. If you want to use the powered armored rules from the Chrome books or the Land of the Free books, you have to have Maximum Metal. To say the book ramps up the lethality would be an understatement. But with that warning, let's take a look at the heaviest book in all of Cyberpunk. I'm Mr. Welch, and this is Maximum Metal. The book was written in 1993 by Mark Colburn, Craig Sheely, and Derek Quintanar. This is the first book I've covered for Cyberpunk that doesn't have the involvement of Mike Pondsmith in the writing credits. Alan Okamoto did the cover art. The book is broken into three parts: vehicle construction, vehicle list, and the powered armor rules and lists. That means the video might be a little bit short because it doesn't leave a lot to talk about. Starting in the middle, the vehicle list is 23 pages of mostly military vehicles, which is a bit of a waste because unless you're running a military campaign, most of these vehicles will vaporize a party without getting its paint scratched. Even if you are running a military campaign, a large number of these shrug off most handheld weapons, including the big nasty railguns and other anti-material weapons. If you want to kill a heavy attack chopper, a main battle tank, or an assault AV, you're going to need military-grade vehicular weapons. The section on wheeled vehicles has the largest amount of civilian vehicles, but even then they only account for 3 of the 10 vehicles listed. The rest of the section on vehicles is almost purely military vehicles. The book does introduce the long-anticipated Panzers, armored hovercraft that were made a part of Cyberpunk when the book When Gravity Fails introduced them. Panzers range from one-man swamp craft to almost light tanks with a cargo variant in between those. After the Panzers come the choppers with a small one-man variant, a news chopper, a police variant, and a pair of attack choppers, one that's lightly armored and one that's based on the Soviet Hind and is a flying tank that you're going to need vehicular weapons to kill. Vectored thrust vehicles are a major part of Cyberpunk, going all the way back to the skimmers from Blade Runner, so it makes sense that Maximum Metal has 7 of them. That number is inflated, though, as several AVs from the main book and previous books are reprinted here. The AV-3 is listed here, and any resemblance to the aforementioned Blade Runner skimmer is purely intentional. Aside from a vectored thrust jeep, the rest of the vehicles are varying degrees of military. The Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft get their own section with 3 entries, but no additional rules, despite the Osprey being a separate vehicle type from aircraft. They're treated just as planes that can hover, though there's no mechanical way to do this. It's just assumed it can go from flying to hovering automatically if you slow down enough. There's 3 types of Ospreys, which boil down to just varying sizes. When it comes to aircraft, there are 2 types. The airship section, with just a single entry with the Overlord airship. It serves as a flying sensor suite that stays behind the lines and sends information to troops on the front lines. Then there's 3 planes in the book that are just variants of modern aircraft, like the A-01 Blitz, which is a futuristic variant of the A-10 Wardog. The other 2 planes are a fighter craft and a cargo plane with no special rules. The last section is the tanks and APC section, which goes way beyond the scope of most Cyberpunk games, except for serious military campaigns. The stopping power of the armor and the amount of structural damage that even the smallest vehicle has is beyond the ability of your regular street punk. If you see a tank in a Cyberpunk game, unless you're packing your own battle tank, your only option is to run. They serve more as background scenery because of their sheer lethality. The vehicle construction rules are pretty simplistic, and to be completely honest, a bit lacking. There's 12 pages of vehicle construction, but all but 2 pages aren't devoted to just adding weapons to their vehicle. I know this focus of the book is military vehicles, but that could have been an awesome thing to be able to put together your own civilian vehicles with the rules presented. There's 12 pages of vehicle construction, and all but 2 pages aren't devoted to just adding weapons to your vehicle. It works great for nomads in the outside world, but Cyberpunk doesn't encourage large-caliber weapons to civilians. Strapping a couple of big 50s on your sports car might be awesome in theory, but you can be sure Night City PD is going to want to have a word with you. It's great for creating new military vehicles, but souping up your motorcycle or sports car leaves you wanting for more. Then we get to the part of the book that takes up more than a third of it, the Powered Armored Section, or ACPA, Assisted Combat Personal Armor. This is also one of the more controversial parts of the book, or at least the entire game, because ACPA takes the lethality of Cyberpunk to ridiculous levels, packing more armor than most punks can get through, and firepower that can level buildings. A suit of power armor is beyond the scope of most campaigns. Cyberpunk power armor is more like Starship Troopers than 40k or Macross. The armor tends to have multiple weapon systems built in, unlike like a Space Marine with a bolter in 40k. It's also not very nimble like in most animes. It can't get over a lot of urban terrain because of the weight restrictions. That is a major drawback in the game intentionally. A powered armor soldier will fall through most floors because of their concentrated weight. To their credit, though, they can just blow off the offending floor of the target with their payload normally. The ACPA construction set is quite expansive. You can create all sorts of unique powered armor from the book, but even the most simplistic armor can tear a chunk out of the combat zone without breaking a sweat. It's military grade, and military grade in Cyberpunk means it takes military weapons to kill. The railguns and Gauss rifles from the Chrome books are the only things that are going to dent them, and remember, those are highly illegal, terribly expensive, and almost impossible to find. Plus, you need a host of cybernetics and equipment just to shoot one without tearing your spine out with the recoil. Maximum Metal was not well regarded because of the insane lethality spike it added to Cyberpunk. In the core book, the biggest weapons for most players was the assault rifle, firing 7.62 ammo for 66 plus 2 points of damage. Against most vehicles in this book, that doesn't even get through the paint. If you want to run a military campaign or something similar, you need this book. If you want to run a Starship Troopers campaign and give everyone powered armor, this book is mandatory. But if you're running anything but that kind of campaign, most of this book is scenery, because most of the vehicles in this book have been described as TPK in a can, and that's not an inaccurate description. And that's Maximum Metal. It's known as the vehicle book, but in truth it's the military book. If you want to run a Lazarus-themed campaign, or you're planning on running Chrome Berets, then the book is a must-buy. If you're running a low-level street campaign, then you can wait to pick it up. Next week I'm going to start looking at the rest of the world, starting with Eurosource Plus, the 2020 upgrade to 2013's Eurosource. So I'll see you next week, chummers.